Hello and welcome to the webinar on how to interview a reluctant witness. My name is Barb Carr and I'm here with Emily Pritt, and we're going to talk through this and come up with some ideas on how to be better at interviewing a reluctant witness. So first of all, I want to talk about the three types of witnesses that you can encounter on an investigative interview. You'll have the witness that's not going to tell you anything. And that happens. Sometimes someone is there, they're just afraid to say anything, or they've been told not to say anything, and they're not going to give you any information. So when you have a witness like that, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You're going to have to find a different way to collect information. Then you have the witness who's going to give you all the information, and seldom are you going to run into someone like that. People usually don't like to come into an investigative interview. So that brings us to the reluctant witness. I'd say maybe 80% of the people that we interview fall into the reluctant witness category. But let's not give up hope on that, because if you handle the interview in the right way, you can get some good information from a reluctant witness. So starting with that, I want you to help me brainstorm some ideas for everybody joining the webinar, and please feel free to add your ideas too. But when we're thinking about a reluctant witness, someone who's there, let's first think about why they're reluctant. So why do you think someone would be reluctant to come in and give information?
Off the bat, I think of emotions, things that people either don't want to talk about somebody negatively, either themselves or another coworker.
Yeah.
There's fear that surrounds that, fear of losing their job, fear of what other people might think. So initially, I would think the reluctance is kind of hinging on a lot of those moving parts, those unknowns. With all the three that you explained, there's the one that just blatantly doesn't want to be involved. Like, that emotion's a lot different. This is somebody who kind of wants to help, but doesn't know what to say, what not to say, not giving too much detail, still thinking about protecting themselves, but maybe even protecting someone else, or the company or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about all of these things, that people don't want to be there, maybe they're afraid of getting in trouble, so many emotions, as you say, one of the best ways to help someone in those situations is to build better rapport. Mm-hmm. So I see when a lot of investigative interviewers are doing interviews, that's one step that they often skip over. They don't recognize the value of building rapport. But building rapport is all about gaining someone's trust and them having confidence in you. Mm-hmm. So now let's brainstorm through maybe a few ideas on how would you build rapport in an investigative interview. Absolutely. How would you approach that?
Well, from some experience in de-escalation training, a lot of times law enforcement also needs to build rapport, and the first way to do that is through introduction. You have to make that introduction can be as long or as short as possible, but you have to make contact. Yes. So introducing yourself, explaining what's going on, setting the tone, that's one of the first ways to build that rapport, because you already know that there's probably high emotion coming into this, sure. And just that reluctance is, the more you can try to keep the tensions down and be friendly and approachable and still do your job as that interviewer, the better the outcome.
Absolutely, and using those types of techniques to build rapport with someone is great at the beginning of the interview. So you want to kind of stick with the neutral topics and not dive into the incident right away or start asking a bunch of questions right away. In fact, once you have had a chance to build some rapport, you want to put in some open-ended questions, neutral questions, not about the incident, to make them feel a little bit more comfortable with you.
Yeah, and you made a good point too about not skipping steps. There's a stairway model to this of it doesn't have to be so rigid, but just letting that flow happen is important, and having trust for that person, knowing that hey, I'm here to help figure out what happened. I'm here to listen to you and just get all the pieces together, and I think that goes a long way for somebody just kind kind of removing the stress element of whatever that incident, big or small, what that might look like.
Absolutely. And another thing we can think about too is when we're doing an interview, what our body language is like.
Yeah.
So can you think of any examples of good body language if someone comes in to do an interview?
For the interviewer?
For the interviewer.
Good body language would be, open palms, showing that you're approachable, professional but not tense. The layout of the room, depending on what that looks like. If there's a desk that's dividing people, you can use that to your advantage as well. You can't see what people, their feet are doing, but it at least adds kind of a barrier. I think that, being friendly and smiling and just professional tone is going to go a long way versus, being gruff and, I'm here to, all right, what happened? The more you can just try to be personable and friendly and you're just here to gather facts, I think that helps, again, set the tone and carry that tone throughout.
I think a lot of people overlook that. We get so busy with our days that we forget what our body language is, conveying to people. We really put a lot of emphasis on the words that we say and what type of interview questions that we're going to ask without really thinking about, okay, what message am I giving nonverbal, which is so critical because people believe what you do over what you say.
Absolutely.
So if you can make your body language match what you're saying, it's better.
I think of it's if you can think about the environment ahead of time and plan on what that's going to look like for the interview, that also will help convey the right attitude, tone, and mood as well for trying, because the goal is to gather the information. So for instance, if somebody else is seated and I'm standing, towering over them, then I don't have a good chance of getting a lot of information because it's almost like a scolding type feeling as a kid that there's somebody just standing over me telling me, what happened? But if it's an even playing field, somewhere we're both seated, there's kind of that desk in between that adds a little separation, then I feel like I can be guarded a little bit, but still say what I need to say. And then also watching the body language of the person that you're interviewing, as their feet change, or if their arms come behind their head and, they're relaxed and they're thinking of something, then you can see where your rapport building is happening. Because the tension in their body is starting to loosen up. They're relaxing. They're able to talk to you differently. And then that's where coming in and phrasing those questions, that's just being receptive to what the body is saying and how well you can frame the next sets of questions. And, I think a lot of it is not always what we say, but how we say it too.
Yeah. And sometimes there are no hard and fast rules. You really have to know your witness, which is hard because sometimes the first time you meet them is when they come for the interview. So as you were saying, some people are going to be more comfortable with, a desk or something between you. Other people will be fine sitting like we are. And the advantage to sitting like we are is I can see what your feet are doing. I can see if you're making any maybe nervous movements, crossing, uncrossing your legs, bouncing your leg, sitting really stiff in a kind of a freeze position. I just can observe you so much easier. But then you may have witnesses who that's going to be too much for them to be so open and vulnerable sitting next to you like that. So that's kind of a judgment that you're going to have to make as the interview goes on.
I think that's a lot of kind of reading the room too. There's restaurants, somewhere in the late 2000s, they started to change their approach. And I worked in fine dining for over a decade, and there was a way you were supposed to carry yourself as a waitress or server, and Then there were these restaurants where people would like scoot on into the booth with the, like, hey, what are you going to have? It's like, whoa, why are you sitting down at my table with me? Like, this is way too informal.
Yes.
So kind of knowing your audience, knowing, even the severity of kind of that incident that you're trying to investigate. That's not the time to get all buddy-buddy with someone. And so kind of setting the tone, thinking about what that environment's going to look like, I think helps a lot too. And know that as much as the interviewer is absorbing and looking at the body language of who they're interviewing, that interviewee is also taking in and seeing, just as much. It's reciprocal.
Yes, absolutely. You do have to know your witness a little, and in that rapport building stage in the beginning of the interview is your opportunity to kind of observe them and figure out, is this person really nervous? By observing their body language, do they seem relaxed? If they come in and they seem very nervous, then you're going to work on rapport building to help them to relax and just really watch kind of their baseline body language, looking for that to try to determine a little bit about them. And then lastly, a thing that you can do that will really help a reluctant witness is to kind of let them guide the interview. And that means when they come in, you're just not shooting out a whole bunch of questions at them, but of course, at first you're talking about neutral topics and not about the incident, just doing a little bit of small talk, and then you're kind of teaching them about what a good listener you are, because being a good interviewer is not about the great questions that you can ask, but it's about how well you listen. So you're listening a lot in the beginning during the non-threatening rapport building stage where you're talking about neutral topics, and then you can move into questions about the incident, starting with very open-ended questions like, can you tell me about what you saw that day? And then just listening. And that helps too, a reluctant witness to open up, because they're not just sitting there waiting for you to ask them a question.
Another thing that's helpful with qualitative interviews in those open-ended questions is to have a secondary person, a neutral person, to say, I really want to listen and hear everything that's going on. And that's why I have this person over here. They're here to take notes so that I'm not distracted taking notes while I'm trying to have this conversation with you. And in that way, I'm being able to fully pay attention to body language. I have active listening. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm responding. We have good eye contact versus me going, oh, write that down, or interrupting you, cutting you off, that you can just go on and say what you need to say freely. Maybe even using a recording device if you don't have another person in there taking notes is helpful, so that you can have that rapport building through active listening and not make it seem so regimented of the note taking.
Yeah, I know me personally, if I'm talking to someone and they start writing things down, that makes me really nervous. So in an interview, you want to say, here's how we're taking notes. And if you're the only one there, then you need to let them know, I'm going to take notes. Or if the other person's in the room, you want to, as you said, introduce them, make sure that they know why that person is writing down notes. Recording can be really touchy. You have to check with your legal counsel and make sure that is something that you can do, but you definitely want to tell your witness, because it's not ethical to record someone without their knowledge, if it is okay to do that at your facility. Sometimes I find that when my background in legal, that when the recorder was on, we didn't get as much information as when the recorder was off. So, but the good side of it is you have a recorded record of everything, so you really have to evaluate.
You don't forget something, and
there's no hard and fast rules. There's a lot of things to think about. So those are some great ideas.
They are. With a reluctant witness, the best thing to do is to set the tone, build that rapport. Know that there's still a timeline. Okay, we can't just sit here and talk about the Jets for 2 hours, and sports and all that kind of stuff. So, practice always makes perfect. And a good way to get better at that is to start asking questions and doing some light interviewing just with friends, family, and get them to explain something. explain what happened in their day yesterday. And okay, so first thing you did when you woke up was you woke up at 10:30. Okay, so it was a weekend, we slept in. And then like, okay, and what was the weather like? And just kind of getting into the flow of communicating helps, because guiding that interview, like they're looking to you to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And a successful interview, a lot of that lies on the interviewer.
It really does. It's a lot to think about, but just to sum it up, we hope that you can think a little bit more about your interview process, working in that rapport building, taking good care to notice your body language, taking good care to let people know about the notes, letting them guide the interview a little bit more. We hope that some of these ideas are going to help you in your next interview of interviewing a reluctant witness.
And the last thing I want to tell you is we have a new course on our e-learning pathways.
Yeah.
And it's full of videos that you can watch at your own pace. There's quizzes built in. You even get a certificate of completion. It's our little plug on something new that we're excited about. And you can learn the 12-step process of interviewing, know about decoding body language, and about emotional intelligence. So we'll put a link to that below if you're interested and want to check that out. It's a new thing that we've just rolled out in our e-learning platform called Taproot Pathways. And we'll see you next time.